project 2 is actually not tracing fruit, but really more of a blob free-form mosaic. If project 1 was a straight line mosaic, project 2 is going to be a bit of a blob, kind of amorphous, curved mosaic project, something like a Rorschach kind of test shape. And so here we are in our same document as before, and I apologize if I didn't remind you. We're gonna try to keep a fresh version of this on our desktop or somewhere clean before we put artwork on it. So just in case you used our setup document for our first project, I'm just gonna run through the steps one more time. So we make a new document by going to the File menu and choose New. We're gonna make it 1920 by 1080, RGB with 300 DPI. Very good. We're having our layers palette, our swatches palette, our color palette in the left-hand column. In the right-hand column, we have properties, stroke, and Pathfinder Align are nestled together, and also libraries is hidden back here, just in case we need to use some of our commonly saved palettes that we've saved from other projects. We'll talk about libraries in a different lesson, but these are the palettes that I like to have open at all times, as well as control. The control bar at the top should be showing. And there you have it. So to start off today's lesson, we're going to, again, choose the pen tool. But in this case, instead of a single click like last time, where we just did single clicks, went back to the beginning, we are this time going to, the first click is going to be the same, a single click, but the second click is going to be a click and drag, as opposed to just a single click. And I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to move my cursor over here, click and drag, click and drag. I encourage you just to watch at first. Click and drag, click and drag, and back to the beginning. And then I have my shape. One more time. Single click to start us off. I'm not going to hold down shift for this. I'm just going to keep myself in these little tiny curves and just make whatever shape comes to mind. Can do a bit of a zigzag. Each time I click, I'm going to pull. This is looking very cellular, which is very much my style. And hold down Command to deselect. Quickly toggling to the item tool by holding down the Command or Control key if you're on a PC is a great way to use with the pen tool. So again, I'm just going to click once. The second click is going to have a curve to it. Curve. And carrying myself around until I get to the end. Now you might find yourself having made a right sort of a hard edge. Let's leave that for now. We'll come back to it. Again, we're going to start a new shape. Just kind of curve around the other shapes. Find whatever sense comes to you. Find your groove. We're going to refine these so they don't have to look the way you want them to at this moment. These are just basically filling space, trying to create nice, clean, even curves. We're not pulling too far in any one direction. We're having our left hand on our keyboard so we can undo things very quickly. If we accidentally do something like this, I can undo it. Some people, when they do something they don't like, they'll try to, move it back or undo what they did manually, but we're always going to Command Z, Control Z, whichever you're on a PC or a Mac. Okay, now I'm going to work a bit more quickly without thinking too much. And you'll notice I didn't really worry about my guides or grids or my margins on this project. This is a bit of a different kind of open feel. Oops, I don't want hard edges, only curves on this one. The trickiest point is usually the last one if you're trying to avoid hard lines or hard edges. But please know that we can come back to those and soften them up and round them off. I don't like that. Try to keep your points a good distance away from one another. It's always a good rule of thumb with the pen tool. You don't want a lot of points. Most pen tool minimalists insist on as few points as possible, and that is a good goal. I don't think you have to be too crazy about it, but it is a good idea rather than having, like, you know, that many points to make a shape. You can see I did it with about half as many. So if you're looking at your shape and it's about that big and you've got like 18 points, that's probably too many. So I'm going to undo that. And there's ways to simplify existing paths. There's so many things we can do with these, but we're just going to keep everything real simple right now for this course. And I'm going to zoom out using spacebar, Command, Alt, or Option. Hold down Command to deselect. Holding down Command, I quickly get the direct selection tool or the selection tool. So I'm not quite done. Let's just do a few more shapes. Very good. Okay, so now we have a series of shapes on the page. We used the curve tool. We're just getting a feel for it. We're not trying to trace anything. We're not trying to be exact. I think it's important when you're first learning the pen tool to just play, to make shapes that you're eventually going to delete, to make shapes that have no plan behind them, to just make shapes. It is really important. The repetitive use of this tool is really important. Now, as we did with the first lesson, we're going to select all of these. First of all, take a moment. Make sure you have enough shapes on your page. They don't have to lock together. They don't have to be a puzzle. They just have to be next to each other, more or less filling your artboard. Take your direct selection tool, the top tool, hold down V, or press V on your keyboard, and drag across the entire artboard. Don't click on any one object. Don't click like this. No. Click off of all of your objects and make a kind of selection in which all of the shapes appear and get them to be selected. Great. You can see they're blue because this layer is blue. I can change the color of my layers here however I want, and that will change the color of the objects on when they're selected. Now, are edges showing? Let's show edges. I think they are. Hide edges. No, we wouldn't want to do that. Let's show edges. Okay. So we're going to reverse Shift X the color from stroke to fill, and then we're going to click on the stroke and we're going to hide it just like we did with the other mosaic. So now we have a bunch of shapes that they have no stroke and they have a fill of black. Perfect. Now we're going to go back to the pen tool and I'm going to zoom in on some of my shapes, and I'm going to hold down with the pen tool selected. I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key to modify the curves where I need them to be changed. So if I zoom really close in, if that's a hard edge, I go back over it with the pen tool. I could delete it, sure, but I can also modify it. I can also edit it by holding down the Option key. That's where I see I see this tool, which enables me to, the anchor tool, which enables me to change. I drag on an existing anchor. If it looks like this, just simply keep holding it and drag it the other way and smooth out some of the harder edges. A for direct selection tool. If you pull it out. And in all cases, what I'm going for in my art is I don't want any kind of like truncated parts of these shapes. I want them to be kind of blobby, thick forms. They might fit together in the end, but for right now, the main thing is I don't want anything like looking squeezed. I kind of want on all the shapes to be, in a way, nice and round without having any quick changes in direction. So that's my kind of goal. So I'm going to go over these shapes with my pen tool, P, and I'm going to drag on some of the curves that I might want to change by pulling on them, holding down the Option key, pulling on them, holding down the Alt key if you're on a PC, pulling on them on each anchor, holding down either Alt or Option, holding down spacebar to pull yourself around, and continuing on. Clicking on a point by holding down the Command key, because I've got the item tool now, releasing, back to the pen tool, holding down the Option key to, Command Z, holding down the Option key to change this path, to change this curve. So I'm using all of the shortcuts, spacebar to move myself across, Command to quickly select an object or a point of an object, the direct selection tool using A to select an actual individual point, and P to get back to the pen tool. So let's make these all as round as possible and thick, and maybe start to curve around each other just a little bit. Maybe get them a little bit closer to one another. Command Z, no. Sometimes it can be quite sensitive. And sometimes if you decide a point's just not working out for you, hover over it and we can delete it. Great. All right, now we're starting to get some interesting shapes. P, change that so it's a smooth, doesn't have that abrupt change to it. Right here I see the same thing. It's kind of a weird little spot, so we're going to pull it out. Dragging on handles using the Option key. You can hold down Option to drag on an individual handle, but sometimes it's best just to drag on from the center outward. So the reason we're doing this, we could have gone in and tried to make the pen tool trace careful circles and contours and make it very precise. But what we're doing is we're using it in a very loose way. We're purposefully starting with the straight lines. We're in project number 2, working on just the basic function of the curves and how to control curves, but more from an intuitive point of view, not trying to work on a job where you have to carefully trace lines in this or that way. And I encourage you to spend a bunch of hours first with the pen tool like this, working on a creative project that is not reliant on grids or specific guidelines. Set yourself up a few basic criteria. Right now mine is obviously no overlapping shapes, kind of keep everything nice and loose, but so it goes, there is a bit of a scheme. Everything's curved. We are going to add color, so maybe this is kind of like a little bit not as round as I would like, so I'm going to just try to get in there and see how the pen tool can help me be a little more like rounded and expressive and blobby here. Maybe this doesn't even need to be there. Kind of bring this out, deleting points as needed, creating my squiggles. That one doesn't really work. See how far we can get with like as few points as possible, but then sometimes you just need to add another point or two. Pulling, squeezing, using the Option key. Nope. Hold down the Option key to change that. The Alt if you're on a PC. See, now in this case, I'm looking at an anchor, a point that has very different handles to it. So I'm going to click on the P and I'm just going to start again with that one. I'm going to drag from the middle. Again, this is how it looked. Holding down Option, pulling from the center and making it even again. Much more of a favorable kind of shape as per my criteria. I want this to be simple. I don't want any jagged lines. Very few details is what I'm going for, quite simply. So, but all the shapes kind of should belong as a little family of blobs, and some of these harder edges, that's what we're working on. We're working on getting rid of places that we weren't happy, but it's our own decision. You can do what you want. There's no set rules, but right now I think our guiding principle is we are trying to make the pen tool make artistic blobs in a consistent way and be able to edit those blobs the way we want with precision, but also without too much concern for alignment and things like that. We want control, and the more of these shapes that you make and edit, the more you're going to feel comfortable with the pen tool. But I don't want to give you some complicated project that's frustrating. I want it to be fun and easy, and if one of these shapes just isn't working out for you, you can always delete it, start again, make another shape. But you can see I'm taking the time to work and a lot of clicks. There's no shortcut. So now we're almost there. Like, that shape's a little bit weird to me. I'm just going to delete it, start again. It's not that it's so much better, but there's 2 points there. I didn't really want to, so I'll delete one of those. Oh, I can see I didn't really connect it. So that was a case where I hadn't connected the shapes, the lines, excuse me. All right, so you should start to feel like you're getting more comfortable with some of the functions and how the pen tool works from a curve point of view without worrying about precision, just creating curves. Good shape. We've curved all of our shapes to sort of fit into a scheme that makes sense to me mentally. That's the way I see it, and that's important. It should look the way you want it to. It should be an intuitive kind of feel process. We want to get to a place where it just feels right. So now, like we did with a straight line mosaic, we're simply going to choose the direct selection tool, the item tool, the selection tool, we'll call it the V tool. Click once, hold down shift, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and choose a color. Deselect, click somewhere off of those shapes, hold down shift, click once, hold down shift, 2, 3, 4, choose a new color. Let's try orange. 1, 2, 3. We'll choose some kind of contrasting, more green, more tealy. Good. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see I'm trying to click shapes that are not touching one another. We can try something like that. Okay, so those are my 4 colors. We have red, orange, purple, and teal. And then once again, we're going to make a background. So we'll make a new layer. Go down to the layer palette, click new, drag that layer to the bottom. Choose your rectangle tool or hit M. Click anywhere on the artboard. It remembers that I wanted 1920 by 1080. choose the selection tool. Make sure you're up in the transform, or you can, it's in properties actually already. Let's just use our properties palette. I told you to have it open. Properties palette. Make sure the top left button, the reference point, is selected, and then choose for X 0 and for Y 0. And then lock that bottom background. But before we do, first of all, let's lock the top background, the top layer, because that's where all of our artwork is, and we can label it artwork. And then the bottom layer, we're going to select and make black and call that background. Great. And there we have our curved mosaic. It's not so much a work of art that we were trying to create. It was more of a process for learning how to curve the pen tool and work with it in a kind of a free form way and let our brain wander. And I think that is a success. So if we were to do what we did with the other piece, we drag the artwork layer to the plus symbol in the layers palette to make a duplicate. We'll hide that first one, and we're going to hold down Shift while we click on all the orange and change them to a new color. Hold down Shift while we click on all the red, make them a new color. Hold down Shift, click on all the teal, make that a new color, and hold down Shift and click on all the magenta and make, let's try gray, that a new color. All right, a completely different feel. That green is bothering me a tiny bit. And the yellow, I'm going to redden up a little bit. There we go. Much better. So like a camouflage kind of feel. So now we've got two different looks quickly from just one design. And if we want to continue on what we did last time, I believe what we did in the first project was to rotate this around. So we select everything in the layer. We hover near the edge where we see the rotate tool. We hold down Shift so it goes exactly 180 degrees. We make sure our bottom layer is also visible. But while the contents of the top layer is selected, we're going to go to the transparency menu and choose multiply. Once again, a really interesting and unexpected result. And that's creativity in action. That's creativity with the pen tool. There's a lot of different other things we could do. Let's lock the first layer so we don't have to worry about selecting it. I'll select all these things again. We could change it from multiply to, let's go, I'm gonna undo that because I think I did exactly as I did in the first. So we're gonna select all and group that. So before we do anything with transparency, I'm going to group it. So we'll go to Object and Group, Command G. And then I will change the transparency from normal to multiply. And that way, when it's grouped, I can quickly change the transparency settings for every object in the layer. Darken. Multiply, I just had a feeling that was going to be the one. We could try color burn. That's also interesting. We could try lighten. Cool. Screen. Really nice. And if you want to have these selected without showing these orange selection lines, you definitely can hide edges. So let's hide the edges. Even though these things are still selected, I'm not seeing all the little edges there. And I can hide the boarding box as well. Hide bounding box. So now nothing is showing in terms of its selection, even though this is in fact selected, and I can change the transparency settings. Ooh, that's nice. Color dodge. Click back on it. Color dodge. That was fun. Overlay, interesting. All of these are having some really nice effects. Soft light, hard light. Yeah. Difference. Hello. exclusion, hue, saturation, color, and luminosity. Huh. What's your favorite? We're going to leave it at screen for now. That's just interesting. And I thank you for joining me for this class. This has been our second project where you have practiced the pen tool with a focus on curves, with a focus on not being precise, with a focus on being creative, with a focus on keeping your left hand on the keyboard at all times so you can undo things, because we know as artists we need to fail. We need to be able to throw things in the trash. Digital art, the revelation of digital art is the undo button. We all know that. Let's use it. So your left hand needs to be on the left side of the keyboard, always resting, always ready to Command or Control Z. So these are the focus. This was the focus of this class, where the pen tool, but in particular curves. I thank you for joining me. I can't wait to see what you've come up with. And now we will go on to project 3 and start tracing some fruit and creating some non-abstract art using the curves, maybe a few straight lines here and there, but keeping it fun, keeping it colorful, and keeping it creative. See you in the next project.